Good evening, and welcome to Sasquatch to the Salish Sea, the South Sound Reading Foundation's 2020 Books by the Bay virtual literary celebration. Tonight's program features best-selling author Max Brooks, who will be discussing his new book, Devolution, a first-hand account of the Rainier Sasquatch Massacre. The program begins in 10 minutes. Please sit back and enjoy the evening. Welcome to the South Sound Reading Foundation's Sasquatch to the Salish Sea, this year's Books by the Bay literary celebration. I'm Craig Ottavelli, your MC and moderator for this two-day event. We have two special programs this year. Tonight, we're proud to bring you a conversation with nationally best-selling author Max Brooks, who will be talking about his new book, Devolution, a first-hand account of the Rainier Sasquatch Massacre. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank those who have made tonight possible, especially our sponsors, including our presenting sponsor, Twin Star Credit Union, our reading champion sponsor, Port Blakely, our reading advocate sponsor, Fisher Jones Family Dentistry, our literacy lover sponsors, Browser's Bookshop and Olympia Pediatrics, our reader leader sponsors, Bud Bay Law, Daniel J. Bershauer Mediation Services, Henderson Law Group, and Olympia Federal Savings, and our event partners, Browser's Bookshop and Event Support. This year's silent auction, A Chance to Cherish, is a literary-themed silent auction that includes fantastic getaways to the coast, Leavenworth, and Sun River, Oregon, among other fun items. Our ever-popular blind date with a book is back, virtually this year, giving you an opportunity to find your new favorite read. The auction opens tonight and will close it next Saturday, October 31st at 9 p.m. All proceeds will help the Reading Foundation get free books to children and free programming to our region's families who need it now more than ever during these challenging times. To bid or to make a donation, please go to the Books by the Bay event webpage at southsoundreading.org. Click on the link to bid on auction items. You will find instructions on how to register and bid on these amazing silent auction items. A big thanks to the donors who contributed to this year's virtual auction. We appreciate all of you. Max donated his time to this event because he believes in our work, bringing the joy and promise of books and reading to all South Sound children. You can also donate directly to the mission of the South Sound Reading Foundation and get books to kids. It could not be more simple. Books and kids. Please bid high and support literacy in our region. If you would like to purchase a copy of Max's book, Devolution, or We Are Puget Sound, our featured book for tomorrow's program, please visit the Books by the Bay event webpage at southsoundreading.org. Just click on the link to purchase either book. You can choose to pick up the books at our partner bookstore, Browser's Books in downtown Olympia, or have the autographed books shipped to your house. The autographed books will be available as long as supplies last, so be sure to visit southsoundreading.org soon. For those of you who have not had a chance to read Max's Devolution yet, here is a teaser. As the ash and chaos from Mount Rainier's eruption swirled and finally settled, the story of the Green Loop Massacre has passed unnoticed, unexamined, until now. The journals of resident Kate Holland, recovered from the town's bloody wreckage, capture a tale too harrowing and too earth-shattering in its implications to be forgotten. In these pages, Max Brooks brings Kate's extraordinary account to light for the first time, faithfully reproducing her words alongside his own extensive investigations into the massacre and the legendary beasts behind it. Kate's is a tale of unexpected strength and resilience, of humanity's defiance in the face of a terrible predator's gaze, and, inevitably, of savagery and death. Yet it is also far more than that. Because of what Kate Holland saw in those days is real. Then we must accept the impossible. We must accept that the creature known as Bigfoot walks among us, and that it is a beast of terrible strength and ferocity. Part survival narrative, part bloody horror tale, part scientific journey into the boundaries between truth and fiction, this is a Bigfoot story as only Max Brooks could chronicle it, and like none you've ever read before. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce best-selling author Max Brooks. Brooks is the #1 New York Times best-selling author of World War Z, The Zombie Survival Guide, and Minecraft, The Island. His graphic novels include G.I. Joe, Hearts and Minds, The Extinction Parade, Germ Warfare, A Graphic History, and The Harlem Hellfighters. Brooks holds dual fellowships at the Atlantic Council's Brent Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security and the Modern War Institute at West Point. And as a quick aside, I would like the audience to know that Max waived the stipend we offered him because he believes in our work here at the South Sound Reading Foundation. He is a remarkable author, a true public servant, and a very generous supporter of literacy for all. Max donated his time to all of us because he believes in our work bringing the joy and promise of books and reading to all South Sound children. Max's new book, Devolution, a first-hand account of the Rainier Sasquatch Massacre, is, according to Blake Crouch, author of Dark Matter and Recursion, the Bigfoot thriller you didn't know you needed in your life, and one of the greatest horror novels I've ever read. Happy Halloween, folks, and welcome Max Brooks.
It's good to be here. Thank you, Greg.
And now we have a few questions from the audience. Grant in Bellingham, Washington is asking, the supply shortages experienced in the village and the outside world were quite prescient and made me wonder if you reflected on them as we collectively experienced similar shortages last spring.
Well, Grant, if you know anything about my writing, you know that even though I always tend to write about fictional threats, I always write about the factual world around them. And when it comes to supply shortages, that's a very real problem because we don't stockpile anymore. Individuals don't stockpile. Government doesn't stockpile. Even emergency agencies like FEMA, they don't stockpile anymore because that's expensive. It's all about the bottom line. And now the standard emergency model is, as a crisis unfolds, the emergency government services are supposed to buy their supplies from the private sector. But here's the rub. The private sector doesn't stockpile either. There's no more back rooms, because that would be costly. So at this point now, this wonderful, vulnerable country that we have does not have any insurance policy sitting in warehouses anymore.
Fascinating. Thank you. We have another question from David in Olympia, Washington, who asks, how do you research your books, and what does your writing process look like?
Well, for every hour I spend writing, I spend between 10 and 100 hours researching. I try to model my process along the lines of my childhood hero, Tom Clancy. So my research consists of books, and it consists of experts that I will interview in the fields that I need to know about, and hands-on research. In Devolution, I had to see if I could actually make the weapons my characters make with the tools that were provided them. Could I grow the garden that they grew with the seeds they found around their house? Once I had established where the town of Greenloop was in Washington State, I then had to go there physically, because a big plot point was when they are cut off, can't they simply just walk out? So I had to see if that was possible. And I learned you can't even walk in. That is some brutal, lethal terrain out there. So there are many avenues of research that I bring to every book that I write.
It's fascinating. Thank you very much. We've got another question from Jen in Lacey, Washington. She wants to know, given your focus on strategy and planning, what can we learn from this book?
Well, we can learn that it's important to think about what might go wrong, not obsess about it, not stay up at night freaking out until your only choice to get to sleep is Ambien and Downton Abbey. Just think about it once in a while. What could go wrong? Because if you think about and if you actually learn about crisis, that takes away the anxiety, because then you know what you're dealing with, and then you can adequately prepare. I was always asked in my early career, do I have a zombie survival kit? And the answer is yes. I've had a zombie survival kit since I was 2 years old in my house. We didn't call it a zombie survival kit. We called it an earthquake kit. But what you would need in a zombie pandemic is exactly what you would need in a major earthquake in Southern California. So my mother always taught me that if you study a problem and adequately prepare for it, that is the best way to take away the anxiety of a potential problem.
That's a perfect segue to our question from William in Bainbridge Island. He's asking, he says, many of us grew up in the Northwest and feared Sasquatch. What monsters did you most fear growing up?
Sasquatch. Because when I was a kid in the late 70s, early 1980s, it was the first Sasquatch craze. And we had In Search Of, and we had my personal favorite, Bigfoot the Mysterious Monsters, narrated by Peter Graves, who, when you're 6 years old, you believe. I mean, there's the guy from Mission Impossible telling you that a psychic detective has psychometrized the existence of Sasquatch. So I grew up just terrified that one day watching TV, I was going to turn to the window and there was going to be a big hairy face looking in at me.
Well, that's very funny. And it sounds a lot like the executive director of the South Sound Reading Foundation, who also grew up with dyslexia in a pre-dyslexic world. And she wants to know, what was the book that got you hooked as a child or a youth? And what's your favorite reading memory?
You know, those are two different questions. The first book that I ever actually sat down, bought, went to a store, gave them money, got the book, and then sat down and read it on my own was The Hunt for Red October by Tom Clancy. I was 16. That's how long it took me to actually enjoy reading up until that point. But my first memory of reading, I think I must have been, I don't remember, it was before that. It was a comic book. It was Rom the Space Knight, special annual issue. And I was in the little general store on Fire Island off the coast of New York. And I sat there in a corner on a little stool and I opened it and I read the whole thing. And when I closed it, I realized I had read for the first time in my life something cover to cover, just for me. And time had passed. And for a dyslexic kid who grew up essentially hating books, hating reading, that was kind of a game changer.
That's a great gateway to reading story. Thank you for sharing that. It makes me curious, if you don't mind, what is your favorite book of all time, and what are you currently reading?
Oh, God, my favorite, I don't know if I have a favorite book of all time. I mean, there are books that I keep sort of coming back to. And one of them is the book I'm rereading now. It's The Great Influenza by John Barry. And I should state for the record, audiobooks saved my life when it comes to reading. And so to me, it's still about audiobooks. That is my primary reading mechanism, is listening. So if I don't have an audiobook queued up on my iPad, I feel adrift. And right now I'm almost finished again with John M. Barry's book. And wow, it really should be called The Great Influenza, A History of History Repeating Itself.
That's great. Thank you very much. We have a question from Shannon from New Orleans, Louisiana, who writes, as a writer trying to make it in the big leagues, I find that I unconsciously censor myself, not wanting to offend or alienate certain companies because they have monopolies over production. Do you ever find yourself doing the same thing, even as an established writer?
Well, I never censor myself if I can get away with it. When I write books for me, my idea, my book, then I'm going to write what I'm going to write. And anybody who has a problem with it, that's their problem. But there have been times in my career when I'm taking someone else's idea and I'm turning it into a story. And I've done that with G.I. Joe, when I did G.I. Joe Hearts and Minds. And, the notes I got back. Because remember, G.I. Joe is owned by Hasbro, which is a toy company. So this toy company would give me the most insane notes. Things like, you can't waterboard somebody. And I said, but it's happening now. This is when the Iraq War was going on. I said, this is a national scandal. Why can't I have Cobra waterboarding a G.I. Joe guy? Because that's a bad thing to do, right? And they said, no, we're going to get letters. And I said, wait, so I can have somebody being cut in half by a laser beam, but I can't do what our own government did to somebody? And they said, no, you can't. So I couldn't do that. Likewise, when I wrote Minecraft, I still had to be very conscious because I didn't invent Minecraft. That was Mojang, or to be culturally sensitive, Mojang. And they gave me notes too about, no, this is a certain age group and this is a group that plays the game in a certain way and we don't want to offend them in any way. And that's okay because I'm coming on board into their world and I've got to play by their rules. And if I'm not okay with that, then I shouldn't have taken the job. So I know what I'm getting into if I decide to play with other people's toys.
Thank you. I've got a question from Megan in Vienna, Austria, who's picking up on a theme you touched on earlier. She asks, how can we build institutions that effectively plan for and protect national security while being democratic and accountable? What are key features?
Well, that's not a big problem because we used to do that quite well. The Western democracies, especially the United States, was second to none when it came to building resilient government organizations that were transparent, that were held accountable by a free press and an educated public. And our government had to be that way because they were going to have their toes held to the fire. Honestly, I think the problem now is a lack of education. That's the big one. Because whenever governments don't want their public to be involved, the first thing they cut is education. And this happens in the West just as much as it happens in dictatorships around the world. Now, in dictatorships, obviously, they're more extreme. Whenever there's a coup or a communist revolution or something like that, the first thing they do is shoot the school teachers and the intellectuals because they don't want to educate the public. But in the West, there is always, within certain circles, a desire to dumb down the public. And the only way to stop that is through education, always. A literate electorate is a powerful electorate. That is why slaves were not allowed to read. That is why, to this day, you see in our Congress teachers being mistreated as far as not being given a decent living wage, and the profession of school teaching being poisoned. So if you want a public that will engage and hold their government accountable, get them reading.
Powerful thoughts and very salient for our times. Thank you. I'd like to end with a question we have from Lauren in Seattle, who wonders, what are you working on now, and are you thinking about writing about pandemics?
Well, I've already written about pandemics. I wrote about pandemics in my zombie books.
Sure. Because
zombies are a great way of talking about pandemics without scaring people away. You know, if you've ever heard of something called the ego defense mechanism, then you know that we in our minds have a way of protecting us from going crazy, the same way the nerves in our bodies protect us from grabbing a fire. If you attack people with too much truth too fast, you might piss them off, put them to sleep, or scare them away. But if you coat that truth in what I like to call the condom of fiction, call it zombies, call it Bigfoot, then you're still talking about exactly what you need to talk about. This is why the Center for Disease Control had a zombie preparedness website. You know, they weren't wasting taxpayer money having a laugh at our expense. They were trying to prepare the public for this very quarantine that we're living in now. But they thought if they could do it in a fun way through zombies and present factual solutions, then they could educate through entertainment. And that is what I've always tried to do, be it zombies, Bigfoot, or even Minecraft, which is what I'm working on now, a sequel to my Minecraft book. And if you think it's just about playing Minecraft, wait till you read it.
It's very illuminating. Thank you so much. Our special guest author, Max Brooks, fantastic comments. We're so appreciative. I know a lot of folks watching tonight are big fans of your books, or will be soon. So thanks again for sharing your time with us tonight. You take care, and we'll look forward to seeing you on our bookshelves.
Take care. Keep reading.
If you would like to purchase a copy of Max's book, Devolution, or We Are Puget Sound, our featured book for tomorrow's program, please visit the Books by the Bay event webpage at southsoundreading.org. Just click on the link to purchase either book. You can choose to pick up the books at our partner bookstore, Browser's Books in downtown Olympia, or have the autographed books shipped to your house. The autographed books will be available as long as supplies last, so be sure to visit southsoundreading.org soon. Max donated his time to this event because he believes in our work, bringing the joy and promise of books and reading to all South Sound children.
Welcome and come on in. This is the South Sound Reading Foundation. I'm Jennifer Williamson-Forster. I'm the Executive Director. And thank you for joining us for Books by the Bay 2020, Sasquatch to the Salish Sea. Because the event is virtual this year, we thought we'd take the opportunity to give you a tour of our location. So come on in, let me show you around and show you what we do. This is our welcome area where we welcome families and community partners and kids with their families. And volunteers. They need to check in here, and of course you can see we're following COVID safety protocols. We've got hand sanitizer, masks, and all that you need. Over here we have our wall of praise. These are all the thank you notes that we receive from our kids and families and community partners, thanking us for the free books and programming that we provided. Speaking of programming, here are some carts that will be going out later today. Kids and families will be stopping by today to pick up food and hygiene supplies and school supplies from our neighbors at the Family Resource Center. And on Thursdays we're out with books, so kids can pick out books and read them over the weekend. And over here we have our chapter books, our young adult, and some grown-up books too, for those grown-ups that want a book to read. And over here, this cart is for our babies with board books. We have picture books for those preschoolers and kindergartners. And then we have beginning reader. And then we also have some great bilingual book selection too. So anyway, let me show you the rest of our warehouse. Here we have our Bag of Book program. The Bag of Book program allows families and children and families to order books, and we fill the order, and then we put them on our carts and put those out on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. This is a very popular program. Children love it, families love it, and we predominantly focus on families who can't purchase books, so this allows us to get books to those families. As you can see, there are 3 carts here with a lot of bags on them, so this is a very popular program. Come on back and I'll show you the rest of the warehouse. Back here you'll see the books that we're processing right now that will be going out next week. And we have volunteers helping us process the books, going through them to make sure they're in good shape, cleaning them with Clorox wipes, and then stickering them, and then they're ready to go. And over here, here's some more program books. These books are going out in our book van. Our book van goes out just about every day, Monday through Friday, to a school with a grab-and-go meal site. So families who are rolling through to pick up food for their families for lunch or breakfast, here they'll also be able to pick out a free book. And we're at most schools in our region already, and we're growing. The demand is growing. So let me show you my other favorite spot in the warehouse. Finally, here's our Family Reading Center, and the reason I love this because it really is at the heart of what we do. We want to encourage families to read, we want to encourage kids reading. We have a beanbag here, we have stuffed animals, we have all sorts of phenomenal stories, and of course some tables for kids to sit at and play. And in a non-COVID world, this is a very popular spot, but right now we can't have families in here. So, but it still represents what we stand for, what we work for in our mission, which is to engage all South Sound children in the joy and promise of books and reading. So thank you for joining us today at Books by the Bay, and for supporting the work that we do. Have a great day.
Think about how the act of reading has empowered you in so many ways. Think about the difference a book can make. Please, help us make that difference for thousands of children in our region.
Reading is the foundation for learning. When children have access to their choice of engaging books and connect with characters, stories, and topics that interest them, their reading skills improve so they can succeed in school and in life. At South Sound Reading Foundation, we envision a community where all children read well and enjoy reading. It's our mission to bring the joy and promise of books and reading to all South Sound children. Our research-based programs educate children and families about the importance of reading and strive to get free, high-quality books into the hands of every child. Our threefold approach engages families, schools, and community partners. We champion families reading aloud together 20 minutes every day, starting at birth. We support schools in ensuring students read on grade level by the end of 3rd grade. And we build community involvement to help young readers be successful. We help families enjoy reading together every day, so all children reach their full potential.
This is what we do. We get kids reading so they can and do succeed in school, but also so they can experience the joy, journey, and wonder of books and reading. Help us make this happen, and here's how. To make a donation, go to the Books by the Bay event webpage at southsoundreading.org, click on the link to select an amount that is meaningful to you from $25 to $1,000 or more. Your financial support puts books in the hands of our local kids. And don't forget, we're also hosting a silent auction to support literacy, and all you have to do to bid is select the item you wish to bid on and enter an amount. Remember, bid high to support literacy and to ensure you win the item. To bid or to make a donation, please go to the Books by the Bay event webpage at southsoundreading.org. Just click on the link to bid on auction items. There is already some fast and furious bidding going on. There's circus training with Sanka, a family portrait session, getaways to the coast, Leavenworth, and Sun River, a downtown shopping experience, a Sasquatch to Salish Sea basket, and again, our always popular blind date with a book. You will be able to bid and donate until 9 p.m. October 31st. And we will contact the winners directly to arrange delivery or pickup for your items. A huge thank you to all of you who have bid and donated already, and to our literacy partners who have stepped in to support this event and our work. Twin Star Credit Union, Port Blakely, Fisher Jones Family Dentistry, Browser's Bookshop and Olympia Pediatrics, Bud Bay Law, Daniel J. Bershauer Mediation Services, Henderson Law Group, and Olympia Federal Savings. And again, thank you to tonight's author, Max Brooks, for sharing his time with us. Don't forget, the South Sound Reading Foundation's Books by the Bay 2020 Sasquatch to the Salish Sea continues at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, where I'll be with award-winning author David L. Workman and photographer Brian Walsh, discussing their book, We Are Puget Sound, Discovering and Recovering the Salish Sea. We hope you will join us then. Thank you again for joining us this evening. Happy reading, and good night.